Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari. Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jaya Vrndesa Ranjana. Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jaya Vrndesa Ranjana. Jaya Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Jam Vishwabhada Paramahamsa Prabhupada Shotara Shada Sri Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder-Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jyom Vishnupada Paramahamsa Vrndesa Ashtottara Shri Śrīmad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananda Kodi Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Naam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Grandharaj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glory to assembled devotees, all glory to assembled devotees, all glory to assembled devotees, all glory to Shri Guru Gauranga, all glory to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 2, entitled Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons, verse number 12. Yatra yatra dujagavo Veda varna shrama kriyaha tam tam janapadam yata sandipayata vrishchata yatra yatra dvijagavo Veda varna shrama kriyaha tam tam janapadam yata sandipayata vrishchata yatra yatra dvijagavo Veda varna shrama kriyaha tam tam janapadam yata sandipayata vrishchata yata varnashrama kriya janapadam yata sandipayata vrishchata yatra yatra dvijagavo Veda varna shrama kriyaha tam tam janavadam yata sandipayata vrishchata yatra yatra dvijagavo Veda varna shrama kriyaha tam tam janapadam yata sandipayata vrishchata. Mataji. Yatra yatra dvijagavo kriyaha tam tam janapadam yata sandipayata vrishchata yatra yatra wherever dujaha the brahmanas gavaha the protected cows vedaha the Vedic culture varna ashrama of the Aryan civilization of 4 varnas and 4 ashramas. Kriyaha, the activities. Tam tam, that. Janapadam, to the city or town. Yata, Go. Sandipayata. Set fire. Vrishchata. Cut down all the trees. Immediately go wherever there is good protection of the cows and brahmanas, and wherever the Vedas are studied in terms of the Varnashrama principles. Set fire to those places and cut from the roots the trees there, which are the source of life. Purport by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. The picture of a proper human civilization is indirectly described here. In a perfect human civilization, there must be a class of men fully trained as perfect brahmanas. Similarly, there must be kshatriyas to rule the country very nicely according to the injunctions of the shastras, and there must be vaishyas who can protect the cows. The word gavaha indicates that cows should be given protection. Because the Vedic civilization is lost, cows are not protected but instead indiscriminately killed in slaughterhouses. Such are the acts of the demons. Therefore, this is a demoniac civilization. The Varnashrama dharma mentioned here is essential for human civilization. Unless there is a Brahmana to guide, a Kshatriya to rule perfectly, and a perfect Vaishya to produce food and protect the cows, how will people live peacefully? It is impossible. Another point is that trees also should be given protection. During its lifetime, a tree should not be cut for industrial enterprises. In Kali Yuga, trees are indiscriminately and unnecessarily cut for industry, in particular for paper mills that manufacture a profuse quantity of paper for the publication of demoniac propaganda, nonsensical literature, huge quantities of newspapers, and many other paper products. This is a sign of demoniac civilization. The cutting of trees is prohibited unless necessary for the service of the Lord. Yajñārthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. Work done as a sacrifice for Lord Vishnu must be performed, otherwise work binds one to this material world. But if the paper mills stop producing paper, one may argue, how can our ISKCON literature be published? The answer is that the paper mills should manufacture paper only for the publication of ISKCON literature, because ISKCON literature is published for the service of Lord Vishnu. This publication of ISKCON literature is the performance of yajñā. Yajñārthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. Prabhupada is repeating in the same purport. Yajñā must be performed as indicated by the superior authorities. The cutting of trees simply to manufacture paper for the publication of unwanted literature is the greatest sinful act. Om Ajnanatimranthasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanutam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanutamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। भूतैर्महाद्भयै मा पुरो विभु निर्माय शेते यदमूष पुरुष भुङ्क्ते गुणान् षोडश षोडशात्मक सोऽलङ्कृशिष्ट भगवान् वचांसि मे। Hare Krishna. Here, Hiranyakashipu is continuing his instructions to his followers, demons. And here, Srila Prabhupada brings in the real meaning that we need to learn behind this verse. So it's a wonderful purport. Here we can see that Hiranyakashipu has his strategy, what to do. Just like in the modern times, even in the current times, the rulers, governments, they have their strategy. Especially they have their financial strategies, right? They exactly know how to control everyone. There are variations in the interest rates, and everyone is affected by that. And then they know what should be the income slab, what should be the tax rates. They know how much land to release, when to develop a suburb, where there has to be economic activities. Everything is strategized. We think that we are very independent, but there are think tanks behind. They plan, and accordingly we live. They know what are the spending habits. They know where to put the money. They know where to take the money. So on one level, there are different kinds of planning, and that is going on. Of course, our plans, and behind our plans, even our karmas, are coming through all this kind of structure which is in place. And these structures are planned and enforced by the rulers. They may not be devotees, and especially in this time, they are materialists in general. And there are material strategies, how to do things, how to get things done. Now, they know how to change the variables, right? They know how to change the variables. Then there are different outcomes. Similarly, there are people in this world who knows how to manipulate the system. To manipulate a system, you need to know the system. And if you know the system, you can manipulate the system, or you can take advantage of the system for their benefits. Now, if you come to the strategy of Hiranyakashipu, he perfectly understood the Vedic system. That's why Prabhupada writes in the first line of the purport, the picture of a proper human civilization is indirectly described here. So Hiranyakashipu, greatest of the demons, knew exactly how the Varnashram system, how the Vedic system works. He knew the links, amazingly. He knew the links. He understood the connection between the cows, the brahmanas, the Vedic studies, agriculture, yajnas, all other ashrams other than Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, the demigods, Vishnu. He knew the entire system. very well. So indeed, he developed a strategy by which he can gain power. Indeed, he gained some power, right? Even though his ultimate strategy didn't work out. What was his ultimate strategy? Ultimately, he wanted to... Yeah, exactly. He wanted to kill Vishnu. That was his ultimate system. And for that, he knew how to weaken Vishnu, or he thought he can weaken Vishnu. What was he thinking? Who is worshipping Vishnu? Devatas. So he, as mentioned in the previous verses, now Vishnu, who is meant to be the super soul, who is meant to be a neutral personality, Upadrashta Anumantarcha, Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwaram, who is supposed to be Upadrashta and Anumanta, who is supposed to be a witness and a neutral personality, has now turned into a doll in the hand of, or hands of, these demigods. So that was a complaint of Hiranyakashipu, and that's why the Lord sided with the demigods and killed my brother Hiranyaksha. So here we can see that he planned. He has to destroy the Vedic culture. He has to destroy the Brahmanical culture. He has to destroy the Varnashram Dharma. So this was the point. And we will see that this is nothing new in one sense. It is happening all the time. Say, to start with, the whole Varnashram is dependent on the Vedic literature, isn't it? If you don't have the knowledge, then how can there be Varnashram Dharma? How can there be Brahmanical culture? Indeed, we can see that he couldn't destroy Vedas. See, Hiranyakashipu couldn't destroy Vedas. However, we know Madhu and Kaitaba, they could steal the Vedas. He could take away Vedas right in the almost in the beginning of the creation. They could steal the Vedas and they could go, so that they understood, if no one has access to the Vedic literature, then we can control, then there can be a demoniac society, civilization. Madhu and Kadaba knew, and of course, the Lord appeared as Hayagriva and killed these demons and rescued Vedas. So yes, here Hiranyakashipu knew that he couldn't do that. Rather, he wanted to destroy where Vedic studies were going on. He didn't want Vedic studies to happen. If you see, if you want to destroy any civilization, any culture, they want to cut down the root, and the root is the knowledge. And it has happened again and again in history. It is not something happened, Hiranyakashipu was present maybe millions of years back, right? We are talking about Satyuga, millions of years back. Okay, even in Kali Yuga, if invaders wanted to destroy a civilization, one of the target was destroying the literature. We know that happened in Latin America. When the Spanish invaders, they wanted to invade the Mayan civilization, one of the tasks was to destroy their literature. They managed to destroy most of the literature. So that is part of the game. And they knew that. They did that because the culture is based on some knowledge, and if we destroy the literature and if we kill the people who represent literature, that literature, then there won't be anyone to pass down the knowledge, and eventually that culture is going to dwindle and die. So it happened at the time of Spanish invasion of South America. Not only there, in India, millions of literatures were burned. Millions, not one or two, millions. There were so many libraries which were set to fire by Muslim invaders. It's part of the history. Everyone knows that. And it is mentioned that some of the libraries, it took many days, a few weeks to burn down the whole libraries. It took time. What was the aim? Because once the knowledge is lost, then we can control. It's a reality. It happens again and again. Yeah, it happens all the time. And this is actually very demoniac, and we can see the modern version of Hiranyakashipu. So it is nothing new. If you think about the beginning of the creation, pretty much right in the beginning, Hiranyakashipu wanted this to happen. And later, if you see, when the Britishers came to India, the strategy was more polished. They didn't burn the literature. What was the strategy? Exactly. They understood that as far as people in India are basing themselves on the Vedic literature, they cannot conquer India. Even if, to some degree, if they conquer, they will not be able to hold the power. They were very clear about that. They did study about it. They had researchers going, visiting, understanding the Vedic culture, and they concluded it is not possible to conquer. Hare Krishna. So some of the Sanskrit scholars from Western background, they misrepresented. For example, the word Rishabha. In Bhagavatam, in Bhagavad Gita, you can read this word Rishabha a lot. What is the meaning of Rishabha? One who is great. One who is, Rishabha, you address somebody who is great, you address as Rishabha. Rishabhadev is there, Supreme Lord. Or you can, Arjuna is addressed in this way. And great Aryans are addressed in this way as Rishabha. However, even Indra is addressed as Rishabha. However, some of the translations, Rishabha, it means a bull. Because Risha has the meaning of bull as well. So since the words has multiple meanings, so to denigrate. They use different translation, different word meanings, which doesn't make any sense. So many of the translation didn't make any sense. And then started saying, look, this kind of literature doesn't make any sense. So this is the way they wanted to conquer India by ruining its roots. And it was very successful. Sad to say that it was very successful. And later, in one of the letters to his mother, Max Muller tells that he was appointed by British East India Company to misrepresent the Vedic literature. He was a paid staff and he was paid high amount of money. He revealed in a letter. And it's a reality. So, and it was published and many, many thousands of copies were distributed. So there was book distribution as well. So first misrepresent and then distribute this widely so that people lose complete enthusiasm to go any further in terms of Vedic literature. And Indians themselves lost interest in Vedic literature, isn't it? And it came to a point that if you know about the Arya Samaj and all of those people, they were interested in Vedas and some of the ritualistic aspect of Vedas. And at the same time, they were not interested at all in Krishna or in Puranas or any kinds of worship. They wanted to destroy devotion completely. And many of the Indian scholars, they supported. And Brahma Samaj, Prabhupada writes in his purports about Brahma Samaj, where they don't accept worship of the deity. They don't want any kinds of bhakti altogether. And we know from the history, that is the time a great Acharya appeared in the Vaishnava line in the recent times. Who was that? No. Bhaktivedanta Thakur. So Bhaktivedanta Thakur had to establish the position of Bhagavad literature, of Puranas. That was the time, but people didn't have any respect for Puranas at all. They were into some Vedic impersonal understanding, and it was among the intellectuals, and that was kind of supported by the Britishers, and that's it. And they didn't want to worship the Lord, and that is the time Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur came, and he gave a proper understanding of the Vedic literature. He set the philosophical and intellectual basis to bhakti literature. Because on one side this was going on, and on the other side, Vaishnavas were not represented properly because there were only Babajis. And Vaishnavas means beggars. That was the kind of understanding that time in India, even in Bengal. There was no respect for Vaishnavism because there was no proper philosophical basis, even though there is a philosophical basis, but it was not present among the scholars nor among the public. And Bhakti, if you read the literatures given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it is so systematic presentation of the philosophy, very systematic, and so profound writing, and so many literatures. He wrote about 60 or 70 books in his lifespan. He was constantly writing to establish, to give the basis. So it's very important for us. And in the current time, if you talk about spirituality, now, of course, before the contribution of Srila Prabhupada, spirituality is simply impersonalism and simply Mayavad. So many Swamis, many yogis went to the West, but they presented impersonal understanding. They couldn't present bhakti. They couldn't present the real meaning of Bhagavad Gita. And as we know, the entire Bhagavad Saptahs which are going on in India, they are simply storytelling. There is no philosophy. There is no prescription for transformation. That is it became just an sattvic entertainment. So by the appearance of Srila Prabhupada, we can see that he gave the knowledge, he re-established Vedic literature in a way that we can understand and we can access. It is accessible, that is the most important thing. Anyone can access Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Anyone can access Bhagavad Gita. And so many other literature. This is something which is very unique. It is something which is very precious. It's very precious. We think it's easy. No. even in the ancient times, to access knowledge was very difficult. Sometimes it was monopolized by certain groups. Sometimes it wasn't available. For example, we know Bhaktivinoda Thakur had to wait 7 years to get a genuine copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Can you imagine? And for us, everywhere, if you have a phone, we have Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? It is so easily accessible. So that wasn't the case. That is by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. He made it accessible. So here we know Hiranyakashipu wanted to destroy Vedic studies. That is very strategic. In India, some states, in Kerala, where I am from, the government is discouraging any kind of Bhagavad Gita studies as part of the temples. They don't want that to happen. There is a whole thing going on there for years, because by the by, the temples are under government, most of the temples, big, huge temples, and they have some funding for religious studies. But every year, that funds get lapsed. So they allot the fund, but every year, that fund get lapsed, that it's never used, and it goes back to the government. Every year, they do allot, and after that, it becomes lapsed, and it goes back to the government. Why? They clearly don't want anyone to understand Bhagavad Gita or any other literature. Of course, there are other saptas. Externally, so many things are going on. But in the temples, they don't want such a thing to happen on a regular basis. They don't want such a curriculum to take place. So it's happening now. So what Hiranyakashipu did, it is part of the history. It's still going on. It is not happened in long back, How about now? We can see in terms of previously it was colonization. It was going on. Now there is economic colonization, and not only that, there is cultural colonization. What is Bollywood? What is all different kinds of channels? They're invading the country by Western culture, non-Vedic culture, which are not beneficial. So there is cultural invasion that is going on. So if you think that this acts of Hiranyakashipu, it is still very relevant to modern times. So our hope is books of Srila Prabhupada. If you talk about Vedic literature, the current hope is books of Srila Prabhupada, and that's why book distribution is so important. We need these books to go out. We need people to read at least something so that there is change. And we can see that there is change, isn't it? Even in a short span, we did this marathon, just a month, right? But we can see some people indeed read these books, right? When we go to even remote places, if you go year after year, some people do say the same thing. I have read a few chapters of Bhagavad Gita. And some people say, I read the entire Bhagavad Gita. Is it true? When you go to the same place again and again, we can meet people who have read Srila Prabhupada's books. So there is transformation. We'll discuss about that a little bit later. But yes, that is the hope. We have knowledge. That is the big thing. And our parampara is known for producing literature. That is a speciality of parampara. Starting from Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma, he has Vedas in his hand. Not only that, he has personified Vedas accompanying him wherever he goes. We know 5th canto, when he came near King Priyavrata in the Gandhamadana mountain, Brahma didn't come by himself. He didn't come by himself in the swan carrier, but all the demigods and the Vedas personified were accompanying him. It's a speciality. And down the line, all the great acharyas, they gave so many literature. So Srila Prabhupada gave so many literature. And we can see that even followers of Srila Prabhupada are giving so many literatures. So this is a speciality. We have knowledge. So we need to access and we need to distribute. It's very important. It's good for us and it's good for others. And next point is cows. Vedic literature. One is Hiranyakashipu's strategy, destroy the Vedic studies. Then he didn't want cow protection to take place. Why? Go Brahmana Hitayacha. Prabhupada writes in the purport that even before Brahmanas, cows are important. Do you know why? In one sense, more important than Brahmanas are cows. Why? Yeah, without cows, there is no possibility of Brahmanical culture. There is no Brahmanical culture without cows. So this is the essence. Because one, for the intelligence and for the worship, especially in the Vedic times, there is no question of Brahmanical culture without cows. Because they used to worship, they used to worship the Supreme Lord, using sacrifices, and for any kind of worship, cows are required. Panjagavya, Panjamrita, the 5 products of cows, Panjamrita. In the worship, we need all this. So where is it coming from? The cows. So cow protection is so important. And Prabhupada writes, the milk is liquid dharma. Dharma in the liquidified form, That is milk. So bull is representing dharma, personification, and it's the liquid dharma coming. So cows are so important. And now the same thing is going on, right? Slaughter of cows in massive scale. Whatever Hiranyakashipu was trying to do, now it is organized by the governments in a massive scale. Everywhere, including in India. India is the second biggest exporter of meat. India is the second biggest exporter of meat. It's like that. So there are some changes. Previously, there used to be a lot of subsidies for slaughterhouses. A few years back, number of years back. There was a huge subsidy for slaughterhouses. So this is how it is. I hope things are changed a little bit now, but still, it's a big export of meat. After, Brazil is the first, something like that. And next is India. So we are talking about serious karma, ugra karma. It is not something which is light, but it is very, very heavy. So cow protection is very important. At least in our own scale, we need to do cow protection. We can see devotees are trying to do cow protection. We have our farm, we have cow protection. And around the world, there is some push for cow protection, which is very important. And next comes, after go, Brahmanas. As Prabhupada writes here, if in any culture, Brahmanas are very important because they can encourage Kshatriyas to perform yajnas, that was mentioned previously. And also Brahmanas are the people who train others. Brahmanas have to train others. All other classes are ultimately trained by Brahmanas because they hold the knowledge and they are representing Vedas. So in this way, if there are no Brahmanas, means there is no knowledge and there is no training and the society is going to degrade. It is mentioned that in Vedic times, there has to be one Brahmana among 1,000 people. If there are, that is a ratio required, minimum requirement. Okay, 1 in 1,000. What percentage is that? 0.1%. Brahmanas are required. So it is said, if there is one Brahmana, proportionately there can be 9 Kshatriyas. So one Brahmana can guide 9 Kshatriyas. And under 9 Kshatriyas, there can be 90 Vaishyas. And then under them, there can be for rest of all these 100 people, 1, 9 and 90, add up to 100. For this Brahmana, Kshatriya and Vaishya, there has to be 900 Shudras. So this was the ratio. This was actually the Varnashram system. This was the ratio in which the society was running. So there is one Brahmana to guide 1,000 people, roughly speaking. So this is how it was working. So there used to be a system. So Srila Prabhupada wanted directly to have Brahmanas in our society. So Prabhupada didn't try to establish Varnashram system straight away, or Varna straight away. First he tried to establish the spiritual culture. So he established Nama Sankirtan, chanting, Bhagavatam studies, worshipping the deity directly, the spiritual aspect. And then based on that, he wanted Brahmanical culture, and for that he wanted Brahmanas in the society. So that is the reality. So Prabhupada wanted Brahmanas, and he wanted to train Brahmanas, and that's why everything in our movement is very Brahmanical, isn't it? Getting up early in the morning, attending Mangalarati, chanting the rounds, worshipping Tulasi, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam class, Guru Puja, having prasad, everything is very Brahmanical. It is Brahmanically oriented. Even though we may have different natures or we may have mixed up natures, but everything is basing on Brahmanical culture. Without that, we cannot make progress. Because without some amount of goodness, we won't be able to chant, we won't be able to go deeper in chanting, we won't be able to understand Shastra. We won't be able to do proper service. So everything is based on goodness. Everything is based on Brahmanical culture. And Srila Prabhupada wanted Brahmanas because then they can guide others. We may guide others, we may help others in our own capacity. But it is very important. So Prabhupada writes, he makes this point, unless there is a Brahmana to guide, a Kshatriya to rule perfectly, and a perfect Vaishya to produce food and protect the cows, how will people live peacefully? It is impossible. And we can see that in the society. It's not at all difficult to see. Because all these things are not happening in this world. And so there is no peace in the society. There is a havoc. And it is a responsibility of us to help the society. We'll come back to that again. And finally, it's mentioned about the trees. Hiranyakashipu wanted to cut all the fruit trees, so there is nothing to sustain on. In one sense, encouraging meat eating, right? Currently, if you see, of course, there is agriculture, but that is also being manipulated. There is so much of stuff so much of fertilizers are used. And if you want something good, something organic, that is more expensive. And that was the norm, if you think about it. Everything was organic in this world, right, before. Now, if you want organic, we had to pay. As one person was telling, as a big discovery, he was mentioning, if you go to market, if you go somewhere, if you see a fruit or a vegetable which is slightly eaten by some birds or anything, and then it is good. Because it means that it is actually good because they know what to eat. So that is a condition. Previously, everything was organic, and now it is a big thing. Otherwise, now a lot of things are genetically modified. So see how the Kali Yuga corruption is coming into the food. So everything is corrupted. We can see that. Not just then, now also we can experience this directly. And Prabhupada writes, very important point, that trees shouldn't be cut unnecessarily. And Prabhupada went to one temple and he saw that one tree wasn't there anymore. And Prabhupada was very upset. He asked, why are you cutting the trees? We are not supposed to cut the trees unnecessarily. Okay, if you had to build a temple there, then you had to do something about it. But we cannot just cut the trees. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, there is one kind of aparadh. Okay, Nama aparadh is there, Seva aparadh is there, Vaishnava aparadh. There are different kinds of aparadh. There is one kind of aparadh which is called Jiva aparadh. That can also influence our chanting. What is Jiva aparadh? Just offending anyone, any living being. That is also considered as an aparadh. So that is also counted for one. So one shouldn't offend anyone. So we cannot just destroy trees. And that is going on. And now Prabhupada comes to the point, what is the main use of the trees? Paper. To produce literature which are of no use. As Bhagavatam in the first canto of 5th chapter mentioned, Tad vayasam tirtham ushanti manasa nayatraham sa niramantyu shikshaya. What is the vayasam tirtham? What is the meaning of vayasam tirtham? Place of pilgrimage of cross. Prabhupada writes, actually who says this? Narada Muni, right? Narada Muni speaks to Vyasadeva. Tad vayasam tirtham. All this literature which are not glorifying Krishna are place of pilgrimage of cross or just garbage. Very straight. And so Prabhupada is not telling anything new. It is from Bhagavatam, from 5th chapter, 1st canto. Here we can see it is just useless. And Prabhupada writes, the only purpose of producing paper is for printing ISKCON literature. Prabhupada is presenting very emphatically. And he's very clear because it's helping people. Isn't it? Even when you distribute books, people ask this question, right? We don't support, we are green. We don't want to support any cutting down trees. So we don't want to take your book, right? We want e-version, right? We want digital version. Do you think that digital version is not going to destroy the planet? You think like that? No. It's just another illusion. It is just another illusion. Where digital means there has to be electricity, right? Where is it coming from? So in this material world, everything is linked. One may be a bit worse than the other, but everything is linked. In old times, how they used to produce literature? Palm leaves. That was really eco-friendly, if you really think about it, right? How we used to eat, if you go to my place, a banana leaf, it's very common. If you go to Bengal, banana, there are different kinds of leaves stitched together, more advanced. Otherwise, if you go to South India traditionally, it's, now also if you go to a wedding or a big celebration, it's all banana leaf. It's very eco-friendly, isn't it? You eat and you throw, and it is good for the ground. It's going to give nutrition to the soil. So we knew how to live, but now we don't know. So that is a problem. So that's why Prabhupada mentions the only purpose of cutting down the trees to produce paper in which we can have Krishna conscious literature, because it is going to help everyone. So this is the point. Now, in all these verses, Srila Prabhupada emphasizes Sankirtan Yajna. In the previous verse that Prabhupada was talking about, because this is the real Yajna. Because without that, there is nothing going to be very practical in Kali Yuga. So other kind of yajna based on the ghee, milk, fire sacrifice is not going to work. It is, we all know, it is Sankirtan Yajna. And even to have Sankirtan Yajna, there has to be a system. So yes, on one side, we have Nama Sankirtan, we can have book distribution, we can have deity worship, but that in itself is insufficient. Srila Prabhupada realized that. So this is actually the spiritual side of it. Nama Sankirtan, book distribution, studying books, worshipping the deity, association of the devotees temple. That's why he said, I have only done 50% of the task. Actually, that is a reality if you think about, because we can have the spiritual knowledge, we can have the spiritual practices, but if there is no supportive system, it cannot flourish. There can be challenges. We can see challenges. So Prabhupada wanted Varnashram system, Devi Varnashram system, which is very conducive to spiritual upliftment, which is very conducive to the development of Krishna consciousness. So that's why Prabhupada wanted Varnashram system to be established. However, he couldn't do it. And he wanted devotees to establish Varnashram system. At the same time, we don't have a crystal clear idea how to do it. Still, it's a work in progress. Still, devotees are thinking how to do it. So there are different models which are being tried out. For example, trying to establish Varnashram in the farm community by training villagers, those who are already farming and those who are already producing food, training them. For example, we cannot have all the devotees. If we ask, okay, devotees are here. Now, we need some Vaishyas who are going to do cow protection and who are going to do farming. So if we ask, you are all ready for that, we want a section. Nobody is going to lift the hand up because many of us are trained in a different way. There may not be any aptitude for that. Now, if you take the wrong people who do not have such kind of aptitude, now you go to the farm, live in the farm, now you start farming, is it going to work? Even if one's own guru instructs, it may work for some time. And after that, one will return to one's own nature. It never works. So some devotees intelligently are trying to train farmers. They're trying to make devotees among farmers and teach them how to use cow products instead of fertilizers, instead of pesticides. I was speaking to some devotees in Vada. They were telling they were producing pesticides based on the cow urine, and they're training the villagers there how to do it. So this is a very effective, efficient way of doing it. So similarly, Hungary, they are producing their food, at least to some extent. So we'll have to try out different things. How can we have a sustainable community? How can we have a sustainable society? If the world is going to face problems, already we are facing different kind of problems. And now we don't have good food. There are issues. Even for milk, we have mother cow dairy, which is good, because we have milk which is not produced from slaughter cows. So there are things happening in our society. UK, they have a similar system. So a few things are happening, and these kind of models are very important. And because we cannot just say that I will just distribute books and I will worship the deity, I will do Nama Sankirtan. That is not enough, but there has to be a supportive system, a supportive Varnashram system. How to develop? Okay, that is work in progress. It's not easy. On the other side, if there has to be an impact to the society, we have to work in two levels. One, among the leadership, and second, among the masses. These two are very important, and we can see that this was a strategy taken by Srila Prabhupada. For masses, there was Harinam Sankirtan, book distribution, prasadam distribution, right? And indeed, he made it a point that he had meetings with the intellectuals, with the leaders of the society. When Prabhupada visited any temple, including Melbourne, he wanted meetings with the leaders of the society. So it was the duty of the disciples to get leaders and bring them in front of Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada was very focused on that. Of course, indeed, he influenced some of the leaders, for example, George Harrison. And it had an impact, isn't it? A great impact. If you see, at that time, thousands and thousands of people became devotees because of George Harrison, because Prabhupada influenced George Harrison and his songs had such an influence. So we can see that Prabhupada indeed influenced leaders, and at the same time he provided for the masses. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yadyat Acharita Shrestha. Whatever the great leaders do, others do follow. So we can see, so this is one of the strategy. And on the other side, we need something for the masses. Just off the street, book distribution, prasadam distribution, other things. And here also our leadership try to establish connection with the leadership, which is very important. So we can see we had to go in these two tracks. Even if you take the example of Lord Chaitanya, did he preach to the leadership? He did. Who are the great personalities that he preached? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Who is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya? He was the greatest person in the whole kingdom. Under Prataparudra, if you see, he was the most influential person. He was the minister. He was the advisor to the king. It's a big position. He was even training sannyasis. He could train sannyasis. He was a grihastha, but he could train sannyasis. It means he had impact in the society. And Lord Chaitanya, by his mercy, he converted Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya into a devotee. Then who else? Yeah, Ramananda Roy. He was already a great devotee. And indeed, Lord Chaitanya encouraged Ramananda Roy to be renounced. Right? He was in a higher position. It's actually opposite. Generally, if somebody is in a higher position, we encourage them. Continue your position. You influence who are under you. But Lord Chaitanya did the opposite to Ramananda Roy. What is the instruction? You give up the position and you be with me. You be my associate. Of course, we can see that had an impact. But who is the other personality, great personality? Prakashananda Saraswati, because he was the leader of all Mayavadi sannyasis in Varanasi. Now also if you go, Varanasi, it's a place of Vedic culture. There are so many sannyasis, many of them are Mayavadis. There are so many sannyasis and so many things going on there. And there, Prakashananda Saraswati was the leader, and he converted him into a Vaishnava, and all his followers became Vaishnavas. So Mahaprabhu did that. At the same time, I'll explain two things. Who was the key person to influence low class people? Lord Nityananda. Nityananda, he would go anywhere, including liquor houses. He will go liquor house, he will preach there. He can go anywhere and he can preach. That is the mercy of Nityananda. So indeed, Nityananda preached to all classes of people. And Lord Chaitanya said, you are even more merciful than me, because I cannot go to all these places and you are going to all these places and preaching. So Nityananda carried the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, and ultimately it's the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Lord Nityananda was carrying. Because he didn't preach unless and until Lord started Sankirtan Yajna. Nityananda was hiding. He hid himself, right? He traveled around India, and he never manifested anything unless and until Lord inaugurated Sankirtan Yajna. So Lord Nityananda completely followed Lord Chaitanya. Not only that, through Lord Nityananda, not only that, he personally reached to the masses. It is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela that Lord Chaitanya couldn't manifest all his powers in Nadia, Godram, in Mayapur. He couldn't manifest all his powers. Why? Because all of them were devotees already. He had strong associates and everyone became devotee. There was not much to do in Nadia. Right? They had their nocturnal kirtans and they had their Nagara Sankirtan. So everyone was devotee. So Lord Chaitanya couldn't manifest his power. However, when he went to South India, it is mentioned that is the time he could manifest his powers. He could show his potency by converting masses into devotees. And what was his strategy? He was doing Nama Sankirtan in the middle of the town. Now we have Harinam Sankirtan, where we want to go to the middle of the town, right? Swanson Street, Burke Street. We want to be in the middle where people are there. Lord Chaitanya was doing the same thing. He would go to the middle of the village, and there used to be a kirtan. Mahaprabhu will sing, he will dance. And simply seeing Mahaprabhu, those who saw Mahaprabhu, all of them became devotees. Not just devotees, pure devotees. Then, all these devotees, all those who became devotees, they went to their respective villages. The whole village became devotees. All of them pure devotees. It is mentioned that just by seeing Lord Chaitanya, all of them became devotees. In this way, Lord Chaitanya traveled through South India. And it's also worth noting that there were not just ordinary people, but the demigods. They wanted to associate with Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya was preaching not just to the human beings, but he was influencing the three worlds. As it is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he inundated the whole three worlds in the nectar of Sankirtan. Why? Because the demigods, they came down in the form of Brahmanas, in other pious personalities. They were associating with Lord Chaitanya. In this way, they all became pure devotees. So, when we talk about preaching, on two levels it happened. On one level, through influencing the leaders, and second, through influencing the masses. And that is the only way we can go further in terms of Krishna consciousness, because this is the way we can influence the society. And that's where book distribution, Harinam Sankirtan, are important, and at the same time, establishing some connection with the leadership is very important. So we need to have some good terms with the leaders. Both are important, because that is very influential for us. So here today we saw how Hiranyakashipu was instructing his followers, demons, to destroy Brahmanical culture by stopping Vedic studies, by killing cows, killing Brahmanas, And in this way, the Kshatriyas won't be encouraged to perform yajna, and then the demigods will be weakened because there is nothing for the demigods, no oblations that they can accept. And in this way, since the demigods are not worshipping Vishnu anymore, Vishnu will be weakened, and then I can go and kill Vishnu. This is the master plan of Hiranyakashipu. And such master plans are still going on in this world. And so we had to be proactive. We had to do something about it. So that is our responsibility, following Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu. Is there a microphone? Or is it dead?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhuji, you said we have lost all the Vedic, literature because most of the libraries were burnt, and lot of things, we've lost. So from where we are getting all the literature that we are studying and other literature that is still present. So is this authentic, or from where we are getting all this?
We have the essential literature. So that was never lost. For example, Bhagavad Gita, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And then our Goswamis, they wrote so much of literature based on this literature, which are the basis of Krishna consciousness. For example, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, very essential. Our worship is based on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. You can read the 64 items of devotional service. Where it's come from? Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Srila Prabhupada institutionalized that, and we have them established here. So when we go through the morning program, we are going through the items of devotional service naturally. So whatever is required for our bhakti cultivation, it's all there. But if you ask about the vast literature, may not be there. There is literature for everything. So much. So it may not be everything, but what we need essentially are there. Of course, we have lost even some commentaries we have lost of our Krishna conscious literature by some of the acharyas. So it has happened in time. But whatever is essential, it is there, and Prabhupada has given us very elaborately. So if we can study this literature, that is good enough. As Prabhupada said, if one can study Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar Devotion, one can become a Vishwa Guru. One can become a spiritual master of the whole world. So these books, it has everything. So whatever we need, everything is there. We are not losing anything, but we need to study and practice.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Shukadev Prabhu.
On the same point as Prabhu was mentioning in the Vedic literatures, as you were explaining that they tried to destroy it as much. However, there were some places they managed to keep it, or some trained person already who knew they rewrote or whatever the case was. So that's how they preserve whatever is there now. Now, also historically, you were mentioning about the Madhukaitav, and there was another personality, I think was by name Hayagriva, the demon.
Yeah, Hayagriva demon. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They managed to steal the Vedic knowledge or Vedic.
Yes.
Now, how do we understand? I mean, at the time also we understand that the Vedic knowledge was passed on to different rishis and munis, and they were able to preserve that. That's how we carried the knowledge, forth.
Yeah.
Now, when we say they stole the knowledge, how do we literally understand this?
Yeah. One description is that they literally stole the books from Brahma. That is one of them, and put it in the ocean, something like that, or hid it in the ocean. And this, first we had to understand how were they able to do it. One, these demons were very powerful, and they are not gross demons. They have subtle bodies too. They have very powerful bodies. They are not like us. They are very powerful. They can reach up to Brahma. So that is one point we need to understand. These demons were very powerful. They were from the very beginning of the creation. So this knowledge was not really passed down to all the sages. So that chain we can see primarily after Vyasadeva, where it was divided and given to different professors who were passing down to their students and so on and so forth. So this is pretty much, this Madhu, Kaidaba, everything is in the very beginning of creation. These powerful demons came in the very beginning of creation. Yeah.
They can go into the mind, into our minds also.
Yes, that's a good point, because stealing also means they can even destroy the knowledge. They can create confusion, so the real knowledge is lost. Yeah, like Maya, Bhardha, which is the current status, they are subtle beings, they can influence the mind and they can make you forget the Vedic literature.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, we see there are, in different pastimes, there are so many devotees who have prayed for different purposes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we have learned that we pray to only Krishna, even if we have material desire. So how to take when my prayers were not answered or we get an opposite outcome?
You're talking about which literature in which people are praying to different demigods?
No, for the purpose of prayer. Like it's different context I'm asking.
So the question is, how can we assure?
For example, if we have learned from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam that it doesn't matter we have any sort of desire, even
Yes,
though it's material desire,
that's
we come
Approach
to
Krishna.
Krishna and we approach Krishna. But then how to take when our prayers, we feel that our prayers have not been answered, or we got a different outcome from what we have been expectation, let's say.
Okay, so how can we understand our prayers will be answered? Is that the question, or?
If it's not answered.
Oh, if it is not answered. Yes, definitely. It can certainly happen that we pray something to Krishna and it may not happen. Right? Immediately. Why? Because on one level, Krishna is a kind father. He knows what is good for us. So he will fulfill what is good for us. So if we go with material desires, it is not necessary that Krishna is going to fulfill our material desires. If that material desire is going to destroy our bhakti or is going to create some problem for us, then Krishna may not answer. So how can we understand? Krishna knows better than us. So Krishna may not answer all our prayers. He knows what to do.
Prabhu,
is that okay? In a Bhagavatam, give the example, even sometimes, if a devotee approaches the Lord with material desire and a devotee is very adamant on that desire, I really want that, Krishna may fulfill that desire. If the devotee is asking so much, Krishna may fulfill the desire, but he will fulfill in such a way that a devotee will not ask that for again. Krishna will purify. Satyam drishyati arthidam arthido nranam. 5th canto. So Krishna can do that as well. He can fulfill, but then what happens? Oh, why did I pray for that? Krishna, fulfill my desire, but still I am not satisfied. I really, this is actually giving me trouble only. I fulfilled. The desire was fulfilled. Many devotees have such kind of experience. Krishna indeed fulfilled the desire. What we wanted, Krishna gave, but at the same time, Krishna purified us. So that we will not then lament, oh, I want the next thing. Why Krishna does that? So we don't ask to Krishna for again and again for the similar things, material things. So Krishna can fulfill. At the same time, Krishna can give us realization also. So this is the importance of worshipping Krishna. He will purify us. We will not go on and on with material desires. Example is Dhruva Maharaj. He got what he wanted. At the end he said, I don't want anything. Swamin krita arthosmi varam na yache. Oh my Lord, I am completely satisfied. I don't want anything. Varam na yache. I don't want any boons. But the Lord said, no, I have to give you. You asked, He gave. So Dhruva was thinking, oh, why did I ask for all this? I had to go to the Dhruva planet. I had to be there for such a long time. So his prayers are prayers of lamentation. There are lamentation in his prayers. Why did I do that? Why did I choose? Why did I choose for these material things instead of you? So we can see, so there is a purification. So Krishna will give us the realization. Even if you see devotees' life, even normal, our life, we can see we may need certain things, we may have prayed. Krishna will give, but at the same time, Krishna will give some realization as well. Or we can see other devotees, we can see there may be things, but we can see, okay, that is insufficient. So those material things are insufficient for our satisfaction. What we are looking for is bhakti. The real satisfaction is in bhakti, in service, in serving Krishna. So we develop such kind of faith, seeing the lives of devotees around us who are nicely practicing. We see the examples even from Bhagavatam. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So that was in the case of, let's say, praying materially. But now, what if we pray, about being sincere in bhakti, or let's say, oh Lord, please keep me associated.
Definitely Krishna is fulfilling. Krishna is fulfilling. I heard a push. Someone was telling this push acronym. Have you heard this push? Pray until something happens. So do that. And it will happen. If you are sincere, it will happen. If it's our sincere prayer, it's going to happen. Devotionally speaking, Krishna will make sure that it happens. And actually, it's good to have such kind of desires. We can have a lot of such kind of desires. Now, I want to, when will I chant properly? When I'm going to associate with the devotees properly? When I'm going to preach properly? These kind of desires are very good. Even Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs we can hear, right? We are expressing such kind of desires. When will that day be mine? When I chant holy names, when the tears are coming, like that. So such kind of desires are very good. So immediately we may say, it's not happening, but go on in your life, you can see it's happening. There are changes. Okay? Yeah. Yes, Prabhu.
Just a comment, Prabhu, on cutting the trees. There are some political parties in South India. Their only objective is whenever they want something, they cut the trees and put on the road, block the traffic. And they have become a national party now.
Okay, interesting. Another demons. Okay. Dvija Prabhu, you had a question? Probably the last question. We'll stop here.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the amazing class. We saw here how Hiranyakashipu has this very strategic and very grand plan of destroying the whole Vedic culture and the society. And we also see and we hear how Prabhupada and all the Vaishnava-acharyas also had a strategic and grand plan of establishing the whole Vedic society through various programs that they introduced. And we are engaged in executing the grand plan that they have. But sometimes we are intimidated with our own limitations. So how do we actually help them in executing that?
Yes, we are trying to be part of Srila Prabhupada's plan and Acharya's plan. This temple, prasadam, books, harinam, all other kinds of preaching, everything is part of their plan. We are trying to execute in our capacity. Yes, certainly we can feel unqualified, intimidated. So our shelter, ultimately our shelter is the holy name. That is the root, holy name. We had to focus on our sadhana. That is the essence. So don't think that we can advance in bhakti if we are neglecting the holy name. Not possible. How we are chanting 16 rounds or more. That is the root. That is very, very essential. So our spiritual life is dependent on that. So in that we have our prayers, we put our sincerity, our sincere efforts, and from there everything will manifest. So quality of a spiritual life is dependent on quality of our chanting. So if you are asking how we can, even Prabhupada, it's a very interesting point by Prabhupada. Twice, I heard from a lecture, that twice Srila Prabhupada was asked how to become an empowered book distributor. In different contexts, in a gap of few years, devotees asked how to become an empowered book distributor. Both times Srila Prabhupada gave the same answer. What is the answer? Chant 16 rounds without any obstruction. Focused 16 rounds, nothing in between. Undeviated 16 rounds. That was Prabhupada's answer both times. So we can see, yes, preaching, book distribution, temple, all these kind of things, they are big projects, and we are very tiny, we are insignificant, and we can certainly be intimidated and feel disqualified, but certainly there is prescription by Prabhupada what to do. So that is the beginning. We had to focus on that. Whether we chant attentively or not, we had to spend 2 hours. So better put up effort. So this is the basics. Okay, of course, we can add to so many things. I'm just making one point. Yeah. Hare Krishna, we are really overboard. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Granthra Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hare Hare Bol.